false prestige. Mana is false prestige, moha and illusion, Gita, having conquered sangha of association, dosha, the false. Adhyatma, in spiritual knowledge, nityaha, in eternity, vinivritta, disassociated. Kamaha, from lust, dvandvahi, from the dualities, vimuktaha, liberated, sukha dukkha, happiness and distress, sangai, named, gachanti, attain, amudhaha, unbewildered, padam, situation, avyayam, eternal, tat, that. Translation: those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. Purport: the surrendering process is described here very nicely. The first qualification is that one should not be deluded by pride. Because the conditioned soul is puffed up, thinking himself the lord of material nature, it is very difficult for him to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should know by the cultivation of real knowledge that he is not lord of material nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Lord. When one is free from delusion caused by pride, he can begin the process of surrender. For one who is always expecting some honor in this material world, it is not possible to surrender to the Supreme Person. Pride is due to illusion. For although one comes here, stays for a brief time, and then goes away, he has the foolish notion that he is the Lord of the world. He thus makes all things complicated, and he is always in trouble. The whole world moves under this impression. People are considering the land, this earth, to belong to human society, and they have divided the land under the false impression that they are the proprietors. One has to get out of this false notion that human society is the proprietor of this world. When one is freed from such a false notion, he becomes free from all the false associations caused by familial, social, and national affections. These faulty associations bind one to this material world. After this stage, one has to develop spiritual knowledge. One has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all dual conceptions such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. He becomes full of knowledge, then it is possible for him to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmiratam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Shri Parampara. So these 5 verses at the beginning of this chapter are all unified. They're all a little argument that Krishna has here. So the first thing he does is describe this world as a very entangling banyan tree. Some of you may have had an experience of a banyan tree. If there's a nice banyan tree right there in Balboa Park.
Oh, that big one.
A big one. Yeah, but it can get bigger and bigger if they let it go, because it puts out the branches, and from the branches grow the roots, and then it puts out more branches and more roots. It can become like a whole forest. So this whole world is described at the beginning of the chapter as a banyan tree with the roots up and the branches down. In other words, it's a reflection. It's exactly inversion, 180-degree inversion of the reality of the spiritual world. There's nothing here that doesn't have its corresponding factor in the spiritual world. It's just like the concept, philosophical concept, that nothing can be present in the effect that is not there present in the cause or causes. For instance, I give the example of this building. This building certainly didn't exist 100 years ago. I think it was built in the 40s during the war. There's some kind of warehouse or something. Huge military presence here, naval and everything. You know. And all right, let's assume it was a warehouse. So it was. How did it come to be? Well, it began as an idea in somebody's mind, right? There was a need. Someone perceived a need. We need a warehouse. So they hire an architect who can figure out, okay, here's the land we'll build it on. Here's the building materials. Here's the diagram. You know what you've seen those blueprints. You know. So all of that before anything is done. They have to plan it all out, right? So that's a very important part of the cause. The essential part is the feeling of the need, the desire for it, right? And then comes the idea of how to build it. Then you assemble the ingredients, the labor. It has to be the capital, right? All of these things go into any enterprise in this world. So you add them all together, and you know, of course, time is involved, and the efforts of the builders and the intelligence going on and everything. And eventually they erect this warehouse. Now, of course, then it became a temple when we bought it. We transformed it. That's another series of causes. But you add them all up, and you look at this building, and including all of this wonderful artwork and the sculpture and everything that's going on. And there can't be anything that you see that wasn't first there in the form of the idea, the blueprint, and the materials, and the labor, and all of the things, right? In other words, an effect has, a cause has everything in the effect and more, because we're talking of human beings. So there's many things that human beings have who made this building come about that the building doesn't have, obviously. But the building doesn't have anything that's not there in the human beings and the materials and everything. So now with that in mind, think of this material world. So there can't be anything in this material world that's not there in the ultimate cause. Now this is where it gets mysterious, because we can't perceive that original cause. That's the whole problem. We've covered ourselves over with the curtain of Maya. We've embraced Maya because we want to forget that original cause. We want to be, as Prabhu nicely describes, masters and lords and enjoyers in this world. But that's an unnatural position. In order to have that position, we need an artificial world, which is a replica, poor replica, probably a perverted reflection of that spiritual world. Where do we get the idea of sense gratification? Where do we get the idea of sex and love and all of these things that, you know, people are mad after in order to enjoy? It's got to be in the original. And so it's interesting to note, of course, when in the popular imagination or conception, if people know anything about Krishna, they know about Krishna and the gopis and the rasa dance. Oh yeah, Krishna, he's that beautiful boy with the flute who plays with his girlfriends right in the forest. So that's, you know, that's of course, it's a comic book version, you know what I mean? It doesn't really get to the understanding. But there's an element of truth there. Krishna does have that. He has the perfect loving relationship with the opposite sex, if you will. But that's the original. This is the perverted reflection. And so there's no kama there. Kama is an ardent desire for one's own satisfaction. Nicely defined by Krishnadas Kaviraj in his Chaitanya Charitamrita. In the chapter 4 of the Chaitanya the Adi Lila means the first section, first pastime, of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he describes Lord Krishna's internal reason for appearing as Lord Chaitanya. It's appropriate we discuss this now. We're coming up to his appearance. So, the verse that describes it, there's always a verse, you know, and it describes Shri Radhaya Praniya Mahima Kidra Shovanayai. I will change all the Sanskrit for you. He says, he's thinking, this verse I think was written by Srub Damodar, you know, his intimate associate. So he's saying, Krishna is thinking in the spiritual world, thinking, I would like to understand the glory of Srimati Radharani's love for me. Krishna's thinking that. I can't understand it from my point of view. You know, that's one reason. I want to understand Praniya Mahima, the glory of her love. And through that love, as a lens, as an enabling factor, my own qualities that she tastes uniquely because of the intensity and purity of her love. You see, it's very esoteric, but that's and he wants to understand the happiness, the pleasure, the ananda that she experienced in loving me and experiencing my love for her. Now, even Krishna, in the spirit, he can't experience these because he's in the position of what's called the ashrita, means the object of the love rather than the reservoir of the love for himself, for Krishna, you see? There's a different position there. So, amazingly enough, and this is very encouraging for us, is that he's perceiving that serving and loving him is giving the servant more pleasure than he's experiencing being served. More pleasure. I mean, isn't Krishna the supreme? He wants to experience the most pleasure. So therefore, he comes as Lord Chaitanya, taking the position and the complexion and the mood of Radharani, even though he's Krishna himself. This is the inner understanding of Lord Chaitanya's avatar, is a descent. Now, in the course of this chapter, explaining this verse and similar verses, Krishna Chavaraj gives this famous definition of prema as opposed to kama. See, kama and prema are very closely related. Prabhupada explains at the end of chapter 3 in this Bhagavad Gita, as I keep coming back to that section. I call it the lust section, as the enemy of this. So Prabhupada gives the explanation that kama, material desire, headed by sex desire, is nothing but the prema that has been adulterated by contact with the modes of nature. So what is the characteristic of prema? It means that it's always looking toward the other, to please the other, which is inconceivable, because Krishna, he gets more pleasure in pleasing his devotees than he gets in being served by the devotees. And the devotees are certainly taking their pleasure in seeing Krishna happy. And you see how that's devoid of any selfish desire. It's completely devoid of kama. So he says, Atmendriya prita vancha dare prem kam. Name kam, I forget the exact Bengali. It says, desire to please one's own senses is called kama. Krishnendriya priti vancha dare prem nam. And the desire to please Krishna's senses is prema. And if you're only focused on that, that's called pure devotional service, pure bhakti, shuddha bhakti. And the amazing thing about it is, it's kind of alien to us because we're so used to identifying with this body and the self and the ego and the whole thing. But this is actually our real nature. And that if one can become Krishna conscious, and this is something that we sometimes forget, even though the whole process is called Krishna consciousness, it really means being Krishna conscious rather than me conscious. And that Krishna's desires become your desires. That's the whole point of the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna had his own desire. The wrenching pain that he felt he was going to experience by not only seeing his guru and Bhishma Dev, the great, respected grandfather, killed, but being instrumental in killing them. This was inconceivable for him on a material plane. In other words, he was covered over by Krishna's arrangement, and he had just identified as this student of Dronacharya and servant of Bhishma Dev, what to speak of all the blood relations and friends and everything on the other side. So what's the point? Now, from a material point of view, it made no sense for him to fight the kingdom. He wasn't so madly greedy that he wanted the kingdom at the cost of all of his friends and everything. He was a Vaishnava. He was pure. And so he said, what's the point of this kingdom? It'll be soaked with the blood of the people who I love. Where's the pleasure in that? And in fact, after of course, Arjuna fights the war, and the Pandavas prevail. But afterward, Yudhishthira, who is Dharma personified, was just so crestfallen and depressed because of all the millions of soldiers have been killed. He was inconsolable. He didn't want to be the king, and because he felt responsible. These are Vaishnavas. These are like Nazis or something. And so he needed to be consoled and preached to by Bhishma Dev and Krishna. No, this was our desire, and you have to take the kingdom, and finally, he took it up. So a perfect example, Arjuna was at first rebelling against Krishna, and then he surrendered. This whole point of this verse is surrender. What is it? Yeah, this is describing from the previous verse. Tameva Purusham Prapadye. The key word is prapadye at the end of the next to last line of the verse number 4 in the previous verse, you see. So you have to surrender to that. We'll go back in a minute and show you. You have to surrender to the Lord who you search out. Oh, how do you do it? So this is the description of what surrender is all about. So it says, Vinavritta Kama. So Arjuna was transformed. This was his enemy. He was self-centered. He became Krishna-centered. So desire to please Krishna, that's prema. Desire to please oneself is kama. We were all originally in prema, but we turn away from Krishna, and that the love for Krishna turns into love of ourselves, and those immediately, connected to ourselves. And that's the binding force in this world. So they have to be free of that. Now, as I mentioned, it goes back a verse. So let's read the previous translation from 3 and 4. In 1 and 2, Krishna described this banyan tree, which is composed of very complicated. You got the Vedas, but here he's talking about the part of the Vedas that deal with karma kanda, material subject matter. Karma kanda means a section of the Vedas that describe all kinds of sacrifices and mantras and practices for doing good work in this world, even going to the heavenly planets, and doing austerity, sacrifice, yajna, yoga, in order to improve one's material situation. Not so gross and self-destructive as what we see today in the West, which is devoid from the Vedas. But within the Vedic paradigm, why did Vyasa give that, when he wrote down the Vedas? Why did Krishna give it? Because he knows people are here to enjoy. So how to dovetail, how to guide that into at least the structures of the Vedas. So people within that they'll be chanting Om, they'll be worshiping Narayan for material things, but at least they're worshiping Narayan, they're recognizing the Devas, rather than just complete atheism and the self-destruction. And within that context, they'll be open, perhaps, to hearing pure philosophy and pure bhakti philosophy. This was the whole idea, rather than just all or nothing. Surrender to Krishna or you're out, and you're condemned, eternal damnation. No, it's not like that. Okay, you're attached. Even drinking liquor, Okay, do it under this restriction. Even the meat eating. All right, okay, not a cow, slaughter a goat 1 day a month, and Prabhupada says, and there's a certain mantra you have to whisper in the ear of the goat, mangsa, the very word mangsa, which means meat. He says, okay, I understand, I'm killing you this life, you'll kill me the next life, and you'll eat me. And then Prabhupada says, and after a while, someone wakes up and says, why should I be doing this business? What's the point? I've become a vegetarian. Okay, so it's restricted. Just like if someone wants to drink, you can't, I've learned you can't go on the beach here and just drink. They'll arrest you. One fellow, I mean, now, they have it, it used to be they have it in the brown bag, but even that's illegal. The point is, it's recognized it has to be restricted. It's a degradation of society. When I was growing up, I tell the story, I used to be a gambler, a little bit of a gambler. I wasn't making any money. I was working for $1.45 an hour. No, I'm sorry, I started at 35 cents, and they gave me a raise to $1.45. So even in 1966, when I started this crummy job, that was the low end of the wage scale. $1.45 an hour. Of course, money was worth more then. So I was living at home, so I was able to accumulate a little money, So I took my winnings, my salary, to the racetrack. And you couldn't gamble. There was no off-track betting. It was not like you could go off, to Atlantic City in those days. I was living in the New York area. You could go to Las Vegas, but that was a million miles away. There's no question I was 18 years old. So I said, okay, I'll go to the racetrack. And I bet I lost. I think I won one night. I won something, but mostly I just lost. So luckily, I became disgusted with it after a few months, and gave it up. But the point is that they restricted it because they know that it's addiction. It's harmful for society. Just like liquor, they restrict it. Drugs, oh no. Now they're allowed. But now the degradation of society says, okay, you want to smoke marijuana, you can do it. They're conceding because people are doing it anyway, right? So in the Vedas, the same thing is there. People are going to do it. There's a verse in the Bhagavatam, it slips my mind now. Loke vivaya misha madhya seva. That's the first line. It's in the Bhagavatam. Loke, in ordinary world, amongst vivaya misha madhya seva, people will want to do illicit sex and meat eating and intoxication. It doesn't even mention gambling, but that's the fourth one. But that's just a regular thing. okay, so there's some provision for doing it under restriction within the Vedic, and ultimately giving it up. That's the whole idea. So this is because they're concerned. The great sages are concerned about us, and they don't want to make it so strict that no one can enter into it. So they give a way that you can compromise to do it, but do it under restriction and eventually come to the point. So that's the idea. So now here Krishna describes this banyan tree, and the leaves are the Vedic hymns, right? And the twigs are the sense objects, and he describes it this way. And we're completely entangled. And the illusion is you can go to this branch, and that's some improvement. Now I left that branch far away. Now I'm in this branch. But you're still in the tree. You're still entangled. And it's the tree of birth and death and suffering. And it's the reverse tree. So then when he gets to text 3, it says, no one can see where this tree begins or ends. It's just so complicated. Millions of lifetimes we've been wandering around this tree. So he says, Asanga shastrena dvidhina chitva. One has to cut off one's attachment to the tree with the sword of detachment. Remember? Asanga shastrena. Now, we should try to start learning, getting a little vocabulary. This is why I always emphasize studying the word-by-word meanings. Actually, logically speaking, maybe we can start to do it because we have a little more time. We're starting earlier. We start with the translation, go to the word-by-word meanings, then go to the transliteration, you see? So by the time you come to the transliteration to chant it, you have some idea what it means. You have a shot at least understanding the meaning when you're chanting it, and it sticks more. And this is the whole idea behind memorization. Remember, memorization is that way. You start with the translation. I hand out, actually I still have that. There's an envelope over there. If someone's, can you see if you can find it? It's on the rack. A big, oversized envelope, manila envelope. I think there's some sheets in there still. And by chanting, it goes deep. In other words, it becomes part of you. And verses I memorized like 40 years ago, they're still with you. They're like part of you. I'm not going to forget Dehi nos minyata dehi komadam yogana. These are the words of Krishna. And it becomes, the meaning is the whole thing. Otherwise, it's just like something you learned in 3rd grade that you long forgot, you didn't want to learn. So, asanga shastrena. Now, sangha, this is a key concept in our life and in spiritual life. Sangha. Sangha means 2 things. It means association and it means attachment. You see it there? It's in the rack. Yes, that's it. Are there any sheets in there? I think there's some sheets in there. So, sangha means attachment and association, and they were closely aligned. What you associate with, you become attached to. If you grow up in a household, in the mode of ignorance, and people are watching the TV and the mother's drinking and everything, you're gonna become that. Okay, I'll watch the TV, and when I get, I'll love drinking. It's just what happens. So here he says, asanga shastrena, with the.
I don't think this is it. It's some of it. It's a song.
Oh, that's something else.
Yeah, I think it's China's song.
Okay, all right, leave it there. I guess I took it home. I can print some more out. So asanga means 2 things. It means not associating with and becoming detached from. This concept of vairagya, is revolutionary. But vairagya comes from 2 things, from knowledge and from experience also, right? When you see the results of years and years of smoking, you might, be really serious about giving up cigarettes, right? You have knowledge now. When you first started, you didn't care. 15 years old, I'll smoke. Okay. But then you see, and you have personal experience. Now I'm 18, and I'm having a hard time climbing the stairs, and I'm out of breath, and and so the knowledge gives you the impetus to want to become detached from something you're attached to. And then there's a process. Of course, sometimes the process, just do it, but that's often very hard if the attachment is very strong. So the process of Krishna consciousness gives you detachment automatically by fostering your attachment to Krishna. This is the magic, Otherwise, 4 regular principles, Prabhupada gives it, the 4 regular principles. No illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication, no meat eating, So Prabhupada tells a story when his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he was very serious about spreading Krishna consciousness outside of India. This had never been done before. on a systematic level. So in the mid-30s, early 30s, he's with great fanfare and with full, economic support, he sent 3 or 4, I forget how many, sannyasis to London to try to preach. They had some contacts there and everything, And they had prepared a book with great effort, of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes that they were taking with them, everything, in English. So anyway, in the course of their preaching, now they made the fatal mistake, which Prabhupada didn't make, of trying to preach to the upper crust, because they figured, if one of the lords or ladies or something gets into it, then that'll have a big effect, So, but Prabhupada went into the street, he preached to the simple hippies, and it became successful. But anyway, that's a long story. So in the course of doing that, one of his sannyasis met Lord Zetland, was it? Zetland, I think. And so the British had been ruling India for a long time, and so they knew something of the culture. So they knew that the highest level of the society was Brahmins. And here was a Brahmin, sannyasi and Brahmin, very pure and everything. So he wanted to know, can you make me a Brahmin? As if it's like getting the Lord thing, You're a Brahmin, right? So he said, yes, but you have to do these 4 things. You have to give up these 4 things: illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, meetings. And so famously, this Lord said, impossible, impossible. Because that's their very life, right? That's the life. So Prabhupada came to America and he had the same thing. Now, of course, he was wise enough, not to insist on that beforehand. Before you chant Hare Krishna, you got to get then you wouldn't have any followers. In any state, you see, this is the great, Prabhupada had great faith in the chanting as purifying, as making everything possible. Because he knew and he experienced that chanting itself is Krishna. And Krishna is all-powerful. So they knew of the 4 regs, but he didn't insist on them right away. Just come and chant. If you want to live with us and, so if you want to get initiated, then you have to take these vows. But it became possible by the chanting. Why? Because Krishna's name is non-different from Krishna. And by chanting the holy name, you become purified and you become attracted to Krishna. And the more you become attracted to Krishna, the easier it is to give up these other things. And we've seen that's the experience. And devotees for years together, they're following these regulated principles in the middle of Western cities, where it's coming from every direction in temptation. So this is the power of Krishna consciousness. It's the only reason why the movement is successful, is because it gives us the spiritual strength to actually follow these things. So asanga shastrena, armed with that sword of detachment, dridhena means very, very strong, right? Dridhena, and determination. Dridhena chittam, asanga, strong. Chitva, cutting off the root of the tree of this, which is built on desire. But that's not the end of it. Then one has to go and find out Krishna. The tatak padam tat padimagitavyam. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Lord, from whom everything began and from whom everything is extended since time immemorial. So the process of surrendering to Krishna and becoming detached from matter really happens practically simultaneously. It's not an instantaneous thing. Oh, now I'm surrendered. No, you surrender at every moment. It's something that you work on your whole life, is to come to this point of full surrender. If you're fully surrendered, then you're completely pure. So what this, then the process, and today's verse is what happens when you actually surrender. So the first thing, it probably gives it like an order, nirmana moha. The disease in this world, the false ego, is this false pride, the delusion of false pride. When you actually analyze it, what are we? With these fragile little bodies, that it's a big machine, and we're a tiny little infinitesimal soul. And somehow we're thinking, I'm a big controller, And you can see, Narada Muni speaks about this in the 10th canto, and it's throughout the Bhagavatam. The great harm of too much wealth at your power. Now imagine if, one of us here, suddenly after Bhakta David Chang, I suddenly know that he's a billionaire. Now that changes the whole aspect of, suddenly, Prabhu. Can you pay off the mortgage, please? In other words, his great stature and power he has, because he has $1 billion. That's energy, that's power. Now, but he's a devotee. He's a simple devotee. But for an ordinary person, of course, to gain that much money requires you practically have to be a demon, because you have to be a ruthless businessman or whatever. You know what I mean? So that it makes the heart harder. So they get to that point, and you're like Donald Trump or something. You know what I mean? He's supposedly a billionaire. But it doesn't have to be completely that way. But usually it is. But the thing is, it's practically impossible to be humble in that situation, because you feel like you have all this power. And then with that power, what do? Well, you try to influence others politically. You hire an army, or at least a big crew, to defend you or whatever. And this is how Kali Yuga proceeds. You get kings, clawing their way to the top, and what do? They oppress the people, and they have their own army, and all this stuff. And that's all based on this illusion of false pride, based on this body, because after the body's gone, what happens? Or you leave everything behind, and you have to suffer the reactions from all of that horror that you perpetrated on people. In other words, you get to the top of the mountain, but it's actually the worst position. I've often thought, President of the United States, that's the worst job. It's right in the Gita, assuming in the Bhagavatam. The leader of a country has to accept 1/6 of the sinful reactions of all the people. So if the leader doesn't try to make the people sinless by Krishna consciousness, and who's doing that? Imagine the position. That's why you see these presidents, they age like 20 years. Even the materialists could say, oh, here's when Obama took office, here he is now. It's only 8 years. He's got the white hair, the lines, Yeah. Anyway, so it all starts with this false pride. So nirmana moha, you see how everything is reversed? The success of human life and Krishna consciousness, and they're synonymous, is trinadapi sunichena. The Lord Chaitanya himself, Krishna himself, is giving this verse. More humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, always ready to give honor to others. Amanina, the word man is there. Amanina, manadena, to give honors to others and not expecting any honor for oneself. And this is how one can chant the holy name constantly. And that's success in life. If you can come to the point of always chanting Hare Krishna, always remembering Krishna, calling out to please save me from illusion, from degradation, and let me serve you. It's such a simple thing, but it's hard to achieve because we're stuck with this mana. So nirmana moha, jita sanga dosha. Now this is great. Jita sanga dosha. Now here's the word sanga again, see? So the faults that have accrued to us by bad association in previous lives, we carry it with us from birth to birth. These attachments, unfulfilled attachments and associations. So this is all, it's like a big encrustation on the heart. Lord Chaitanya talks about polishing the mirror of the heart. So I like to say, oh, glories to the chanting of Shri Krishna's holy names, which easily extinguishes samsara's blazing flames by polishing the lust-encrusted mirror of the heart. This incrustation is many, many lifetimes in the making, and completely obscuring our self-awareness, our self-understanding, right? The journey of self-discovery. So surrender and the process of Krishna consciousness helps us to become aware of who we really are and live in that awareness. So Jita Sangha Dosha, conquering all of these bad results of bad association. That's the faults of bad association. Adhyatma Nitya, always maintaining, what does it say here? Understands the eternal. In other words, to keep one's focus on Krishna, the absolute truth, rather than letting the modes of nature take over, and so we become simply concerned with our immediate needs, you see. That always on the focus of the eternal, which is the Lord. Vinavritta kama, completely dissociated, not just nivritta, but vinavritta. It's an intensive, vinavritta kama, material desires in general, from lust. Dvandvaiva mukta, free from the illusion of duality. Good and bad. The Prabhu makes the point. In the wintertime, we don't like to take to swim in the lake, right? It's cold. It's too cold, But if it's really hot, then that same lake becomes the source of pleasure for us. So one situation is good, one situation is bad, right? The same object. So this duality delusion is overcome, and when it becomes very equipoised in any situation, as defined sukha dukkha sangha. This is the dualities. One is transcendental to that. This one means Brahma-bhuta. In this situation, the amudha, the non-fool, one who is anything but a fool, the wise person, the unworldly person, goes, for sure, gachanti is like an imperative, to the avyayam padam, means the eternal abode, eternal situation, the spiritual world. And then the next verse he describes that spiritual world in a little summary form. So this is a really important verse. We can see, work on embracing it. There's another definition of surrender given by Rupa Goswami. I think maybe he's quoting from somewhere. It says, anukulyasya sankalpa patikulyasya varjanam rakshishyatiti vishvaso gopritve varanantata atmanikshepa karpanye shadvidha shadanagati. Shadanagati means taking shelter, because surrender means surrendering to Krishna's will and taking shelter of his protection and everything. So the first thing, this is a process. This is like the door of entering into the house of real bhakti. So the first thing, anukulyasya sankalpa, means the will and the desire and the decision to accept that which is favorable for devotional service, even though it's unfamiliar or even we don't like it, but we accept it anyway. Getting up early in the morning, and chanting Hare Krishna, we may like it for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, but then our mind is taking us a million miles. But you still do it. Hare Krishna, Krishna, right? That's anukulyasya. And then on the other side, and this is true of any discipline you want to go from here to there, any marga path, is pratikulyasya varjana. To give up those things which are unfavorable. Now, learning what is favorable and what's unfavorable, that's part of hearing from Shastra, Scripture, and from the learned devotees. But there's no doubt about it. That was Prabhupada's great victory. He created these books, and there's abundant evidence of what's favorable, what's unfavorable. So then, a further aspect, rakshishyatiti vishvaso, to be confident that Krishna will protect. Just like Arjuna here, they're actually outnumbered. The Pandavas it looked like on paper anyway, that they were going to lose the war. Because the other side had more soldiers, and Bhishma was on the other side. He was the main general, even though Arjuna, of course, was a great warrior. But Arjuna was confident Krishna would protect, and he promised he would, that he would come out. You just fight, and you'll be successful. So sometimes the odds are very great. Prabhupada coming to America is a perfect example of vrikshishyatiti vishvaso. Getting on that boat at that age, You can imagine traveling. He's not on an ocean liner or a cruise ship. It's a cargo ship. All of that. He had two heart attacks. So, but he always had confidence Krishna will protect. Now, of course, it's true. We see devotees die just like anyone else. So, what's protected? Well, along the way, there are various protections that devotees can realize. Like when I look back on my life, it's like you skirt next to the abyss, but somehow you don't go in, I see various places where Krishna really protected me, even in a physical sense. But the most important thing he protects is your consciousness, because that's, after all, you. And so when you're leaving your body, what you really need is the protection that you won't forget Krishna. And if you've been sincere, well, who's going to be there? Devotees. They'll help you remember. And so that's the main protection. But even ordinary protection. And gopritve varanantata, this is number 4, that he will maintain. In the 9th chapter, Krishna has this verse. Right after he describes how futile it is to worship the demigods for the sake of going to the heavenly planets. You may actually go to the heavenly planets and enjoy like anything for some time, but eventually piety will run out and you come back to Martyaloka, the world of death. So you just go and come, like the Ferris wheel, Prabhupada talks like that. So on the next verse he says, but on the other hand, ananyas chintayanto mam ye janapa upasate tesham nityabhayuktanam yoga kshema vahamyaham. For those who are worshiping me without deviation of the mind, ananyas chintayanto mam, ye jana payupasate, who are worshiping me nicely, without deviation. Tesham nityabhyuktanam, always linked to me in devotion, yoga kshema vahamyaham. Meaning that I personally carry their yoga and kshema. Now yoga means different things in different contexts. In this case it means the things you need to contact in order to live. Like we need food, we need shelter, we need clothing, we need family, whatever. So that's things he personally provides. And kshema, your security. You may have your clothes, you may have your thing, but if there's a tsunami coming, forget about it. It's not. So he provides safety and security as well as the necessities. Personally carries. So that's called Goptrit Vevadanam Tada, the determination that Krishna will provide. And then Atmanikshepa Karpane means not have any interest separate from Krishna and be always meek and humble. These are another 6 symptoms of surrender. So this if we're able to do this, then we can go to the spiritual world, which is described in the next shloka in very summary form. Okay, any questions on text 5? It's another nice one to memorize. If you're interested in that, we can have a memorization section on this one. We'll go back to it. Yeah.
You were speaking of gambling. And Yudhishthira gambled away the whole thing.
Twice.
So did he have a problem with gambling?
This is part of the Kshatriya code. And Kshatriyas, proper Kshatriyas are described in chapter 18. They're religious, and they defer to the Brahmins, and they never flinch from a fight, But they're dhira. They're also self-control, very charitable. These are some of the qualities of the real Kshatriyas. But one of them is that they never shrink from a challenge, and that challenge can be a gambling or a fighting or something, And so that Yudhishthira, he was Dharma personified. Even Krishna told him to lie, and he didn't. You know the story? No. Yeah. On the battlefield, it was understood that Dronacharya was a very formidable opponent. He was a general. He was a teacher of the military arts to the Pandavas, and he was on the other side. And so, how to conquer Dronacharya, how to kill it? Well, he had to dispirit him. He had to discourage him. He had a son named Ashvatthama, who had. So Ashvatthama was a warrior. So Krishna knew that Yudhishthira was Dharma personified, and everyone knew that he never told a lie. So you can use that. So now you, Yudhishthira, you declare loudly, announce, "Oh, Ashvatthama is dead, has been killed," and so which was a lie because he was still alive. And since he was so much believed, then Dronacharya would never naturally believe his son had been killed. He'd become dispirited, drop his bow, and then he could be killed. That was the plan. Yeah. But Yudhishthira refused because it was a lie. So at that point, it is said he had to, because of that sin, not of lying, but of disobeying Krishna, he had to see hell. He didn't actually go to hell, but he had to experience it. There's a whole thing about it. And then the chariot wheels, another thing is that actually started going on the ground. Until then, it was a little bit off the ground. I mean, this is the whole thing, where the great souls, they kind of float along. There's a story about Prabhu to that regard, too. I'll tell you if you have time. Several stories. But, so Krishna said, okay, don't say Ashvatthama, his son is dead. You just say Ashvatthama, the elephant, is dead, which was true. Because there was a big elephant, and he had been killed. So you just said, okay, that I can do because it's true. So he said, Ashvatthama, the elephant, is dead. But while he was saying the elephant, Krishna blew his conch shell, so that never could hit. So Dronacharya became discouraged. So this is another example of Yudhishthira being, over the top in his observance of the thing. So that's why he gambled. That's the thing. All right, next verse. Text 6. Natadbhasayate suryo nashashanko napavakaha yadgadvana navartante Taddhama padamang mama. That supreme abode of mine, remember he said at the end, padamabhiyantad, one will attain to the eternal kingdom. That supreme abode of mine is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. Purport. The spiritual world, the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, which is known as Krishna Loka, Goloka Vrindavan, is described here. In the spiritual sky, there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, fire, or electricity, because all the planets are self-luminous. We have only one planet in this universe, the sun, which is self-luminous, but all the planets in the spiritual sky are self-luminous. The shining effulgence of all those planets, called Vaikunthas, constitutes the shining sky known as the Brahma Jyoti. Actually, the effulgence is emanating from the planet of Krishna, Goloka Vrindavan. Part of that shining effulgence is covered by the Mahatattva, the material world. Other than this, the major portion of that shining sky is full of spiritual planets, which are called Vaikunthas, chief of which is Goloka Vrindavan. Okay, for extra credit, who remembers what Vaikuntha means?
Without misery.
I'm sorry?
Without misery. Or
Without?
anxiety.
Without anxiety, yeah. Kunta is anxiety, Vai means without. You know, so imagine a world without the slightest whiff of any anxiety, forever. That's Vaikuntha. And Goloka Vrindavan is the highest Vaikuntha planet. It's not that it's not a Vaikuntha planet. As long as the living entity is in this dark material world, he is in conditional life, but as soon as he reaches the spiritual sky, by cutting through the false, perverted tree of this material world, he becomes liberated. Then there is no chance of his coming back here. In his conditional life, the living entity considers himself to be the lord of this material world. But in his liberated state, he enters into the spiritual kingdom and becomes an associate of the Supreme Lord. There he enjoys eternal bliss, eternal life, and full knowledge. One should be captivated by this information. He should desire to transfer himself to the eternal world and extricate himself from this false reflection of reality. For one who is too much attached to this material world, it is very difficult to cut that attachment. But if he takes to Krishna consciousness, there is a chance of gradually becoming detached. One has to associate himself with devotees, those who are in Krishna consciousness. One should search out a society dedicated to Krishna consciousness and learn how to discharge devotional service. In this way, he can cut off his attachment to the material world. One cannot become detached from the attraction of the material world simply by dressing himself in saffron cloth. He must become attached to the devotional service of the Lord. Therefore, one should take it very seriously that devotional service, as described in the 12th chapter, is the only way to get out of this false representation of the real tree. In chapter 14, the contamination of all kinds of processes by material nature is described. Only devotional service is described as purely transcendental. The words padamam mama are very important here. Actually, every nook and corner is the property of the Supreme Lord, but the spiritual world is padamam, full of 6 opulences. The Katha Upanishad 2.2.15 also confirms that in the spiritual world there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, or stars. Na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam. For the whole spiritual sky is illuminated by the internal potency of the Supreme Lord. That supreme abode can be achieved only by surrender and by no other means. So there's some very good information there. Does anyone remember why the moon is called the Shashanka or the Shashi? Okay, here's something to remember. Many devotees don't know this. So if you look at the moon in the clear sky, the full moon, I remember before I even heard about Krishna consciousness, they'd say, "Oh, there's a deer up there," but actually, the Indians, they see a rabbit in the moon. There's the marks of a rabbit. Just like the constellations. Well, okay, that's the Big Dipper and everything. That I could see, but so many others. But with a little imagination, So Shashi is a word for rabbit in Sanskrit. And Shashanka means marked. Anka is the marked with the markings like a rabbit. So that's it. So there's no need of sun, there's no moon, there's no fire, and Prabhupada includes electricity. So now one interesting thing is in Goloka Vrindavan, you read the Govinda Lilamrita and you read other books. Well, wait a minute. There's all these pastimes, and there's a rasa dance, and there's the full moon, and in the morning the sun comes up, and Krishna goes out and herds his cows. So what's with that? Is there a moon and sun or not? Right? So the answer is there's no actual moon and sun, but there is the movie set, so to speak, where the Krishna arranges that because it's necessary for the pastimes. So therefore the moon rises and the sun rises and he takes the cows out. But actually the time is not passing. It's all just the arrangement of Krishna to facilitate the lila and the rasa and the exchange of love. But actually everything is self-luminous there. And in fact the whole thing is emanating from Krishna's body. Yasya prabha prabhavato jagadandakoti. And then this very interesting statement here. Once going, one never returns. Now this is, these and several other statements like it in the Bhagavad Gita always a scratch in the head. Well, okay, because how did we get here? Weren't we there? If we're there, why would we come here? Krishna says you go there, you don't come back. So what's the difference? Well, Prabhupada said there is a difference. It's the concept of once burned, twice shy. Now that we've done this sojourn in the material world, suffered like anything, and we transcend it, we go back to the spiritual world, there's some vague, trace of a memory of that, and we won't try it again. Just like a child, puts his hand in the fire and then never again, because he remembers, oh no, that's not a good idea. So that's it. But many living entities, they don't come here at all. They've never come here. Like there's 3/4 of them are staying there, and they're always there. It's only a few, who come down, and in eternity makes millions and billions. But most of the living entities are up there. Dhamma Padamangla, that is my supreme abode. So Prabhupada says, this is very important. One should be captivated by this information. So the whole idea is that by hearing this information, this is just a little taste. Read the Bhagavatam, you find a full description of, Loka Vrindavan, and other books of the Goswamis, even more details. So the idea is that this is meant to attract us, even in our material state, if we're a little open to it, to hear about Krishna and his activities and his love for his devotees. This is why I love this book, Brihad Bhagavatamrita. This is a book by Sanatana Goswami, one of the 6 Goswamis, the immediate followers of Lord Chaitanya. And what does that mean? Brihad Bhagavata Amrita. So Bhagavat refers there to the Srimad Bhagavatam, you see? And Amrita means the nectar. So the essence of the Bhagavatam. Bhagavatam is very vast, 18,000 verses. But the Brihad Bhagavatam is smaller, maybe 1,000 verses. And so it gives the essence of the Bhagavatam, and he gives more details. And the thing that always, to me, is one of the main features of the book. It explains and illuminates Krishna's affection for his devotees. When the protagonist in the second part finally goes back to the spiritual world, is this simple cowherd boy who got the Krishna mantra. Not necessarily Hare Krishna mantra, but he's always chanting it. And he has all of these spiritual experiences, and he goes up to different levels. He goes up to Indraloka, he goes up to Brahmaloka, and whenever he gets to a place, he thinks, oh, this must be it. It's so wonderful, now I'm home. But he keeps chanting his mantra, and eventually he becomes dissatisfied there because Krishna isn't there. And eventually he goes up to Goloka, but before he goes to Gokula, where the Vrindavan Krishna is, he has experience with Krishna in Dwarka. And so Krishna in Dwarka, he's got all his queens, there's a lot of wonderful pastimes going on there. And even Krishna, he sees, he's in the mood of a Gopal, so I'll act like a Gopal, I'll play the flute and everything and give him a little bit. But it's not the same, So even then he's dissatisfied. When he finally goes back to Gokula Vrindavan, and he's back in his original form, and with the original name, you read it, Sarup, he's no longer Gopakumar, but he's Sarup. He's got he's related to Radharani, the whole thing, family. So then he sees Krishna coming with Balaram back from the forest, and Krishna sees him, and Krishna points to Balaram. Oh, there's my old friend Sarup, and Sarup recognizes, and then Krishna runs to him and he embraces him, and they both faint in ecstasy. And there's a famous painting of Krishna embracing his long lost friend, and that's like, is there anything more attractive than that? In this world, what's really attractive? Love. If somebody loves you, that is very attractive for us, And that's exactly what this is describing, and there's so many other descriptions like that. So this is attracting us. What do we have here? You know, this is like a pale reflection. It's the upside down banyan tree. So Krishna's attracting us, but we're so conditioned, you know, we have this distractions, attractions. So that's why we need the philosophy. No, don't, you know, allow your addictions to this material world to continue, because they're very harmful and they produce birth and death. And there's the three modes of nature, you know, and four, you know, and the three miseries, you know, and all this stuff. Okay, I understand. So I'm going to become, you know, serious about chanting. So on one side, you have the miseries of the material world convincing you it's not a happy place. And on the other side, you have Krishna beckoning with all of his. So as Prabhupada says, one should be captivated by this information. And if you want it, there's unlimited information. And not only that, there's the process to realize that is the reality. Right now, we're convinced that this reflection of the banyan tree, this is all there is. You know, that's why people think we're crazy. You know, what do you get your head in the clouds for? Get serious, get a job, you know, and make money, go into debt like me, you know. But you know, devotees know, you know, even devotees who've been in the temple or even chanted anywhere for a while, that there's something else out there. You know, this mantra, this process is transformative. You know, it's giving me a different perspective on life. And so without, you know, that experience as well as the knowledge, there's no hope of proceeding on the path, getting the determination to follow. So we should become enthralled by it. We should hear about it as much as possible. Hang out with devotees. Association, sangha is again the thing. Your sangha, you know, if you want to know who someone is, find out who their friends are, right? That's like a regular. So make the decision, okay, you know, to associate with them. And nowadays, association is available anywhere. You know, you can get your iPad, you can be in Mayapur. I'm not here in SanDiego. I'm there, you know, attending Mangalartik, right? I went to Ma Bart's house a few weeks ago. Okay, we got to stop. And I walked in. I was a little early, and there was Parashakti, but she was in Mayapur. It was the next morning, and they were having the morning program in Mayapur, and there it was on the screen. So it's available. Or you know, you can at the other button, and it's somewhere in hellish mentality. So it's all a question of which buttons you push. Remember that. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. We'll resume tomorrow. Next verse, very important. Text 7. Okay.
I can understand now how, you know, Radhanath Swami can speak for 6 hours about what you're telling, sitting there as a yogi. Once you get going, it's like time disappears. But of course, you have to have mercy on your audience too. I was sitting next to him one time, and I wasn't saying anything. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I can't leave. I'm on the vyasa. He has his vyasa time about 12 feet long, but he can have 4 or 5 godbrothers up there. This was 11 years ago. Oh. Yes, exactly.
Okay. So this is nice. You're right. Let's save this because we're going to need this. No, it's the middle of April. Give me one. There you go.
Let me help you. It's heavy, that one.
So you bring your tomorrow? Tuesdays and Wednesdays. That's Tuesday.
I really want to come on the Monday. My husband was dinner.
Oh, okay. Radha Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Shrimad. His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON the founder of Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Vishnu Bhad Paramahansa Buddhacharya, Astotra of Sri Shiva. His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavanda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem to the Holy Krishna Chaitanya Bhava Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda ki jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shyamakund Radhakund Gita Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadip Mayapur Dham ki jai. Jagat Puri Dham ki jai. Ganga Mahi ki jai. Yamuna Mahi ki jai. Tulsi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Transcendental Bhakti Solution ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveta Bhaktavinda ki jai. All glories to the Son of the devotees. All glories to the Son of the devotees. All glories to the Son of the devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. La 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 la.
Would you like a little subject?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One of these? And, oh, look at all the sweet. Is it too much?
There was.
Is it okay?
I didn't have my
Good.
headphones. I had my
And,
passport, but I didn't bring
for
my
you?
F1 student headphone.
And,
So next time
no,
you will be-
it's very
Yeah.
tough.
So
Did you like it, the program?
It's beautiful.
You can have the
One
next
year?
one.
Honestly, I live there, I'll be there.
Thank you.
Is that enough?
Beautiful.
Any other customers? Hina?
Yeah, I was just going to take one,
Pudding? One pudding.
Yeah, to go.
thank you
And
so
not
much.
that. And no, no.
I wear leggings.
Thank you so much. See you tomorrow.
You guys decide, how far is the gas?
So if we.
I don't know,
Right here. If you like some milk. Leche. Somebody else? Both butter. There's lots of sweet. There's no lack. A little something for you?
Yes.
Because it's very rich. It's the kind of subject I used to eat tons of when I was young.
Do it right now. Hello.
And this wonderful coconut soup. Is that enough? How about you?
Yeah, yeah. They have a lovely one.
Please come over.
Ashley.
You okay? You good?
Wow.
Did you get my email? The book.
Oh, yeah.
What do you want? I know, but what do you want me to do?
Next summer. Gita, Gita's getting married.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Got it.
Okay. Bye.
When?
Gita's getting married. Next summer, here.
More?
Yeah, no,
It's going to be Christian wedding.
Wow.
Yeah, he proposed, he gave it a ring on Sunday. When I was spreading the rumor, I was there.
In TCJ?
One or two?
Looks like the big stuff.
Yeah.
Who made these?
I want to go so bad.
I was, oh my God.
Suki bought